Okay, I think I'll start as we've got participants coming in now. So thank you very much for joining us this afternoon. We're looking forward to discussing a topic at the very core of business success, talent, how to attract, retain and train. And this topic came about as part of our State of the Industry research. So late last year, we spoke to more than 300 communications and corporate affairs professionals throughout Asia Pacific about the challenges facing the industry in 2020. And throughout these discussions, the issue of talent management was identified as one of the biggest challenges of 2020. And this was consistent across both the agency and the in-house perspectives. Why was talent management such a challenge in 2020? And the answers really boiled down to three key things: mental health, job security, and job competency. So the first and most immediate priority for business leaders was supporting the mental health of their teams as we all navigated a global pandemic and a remote working environment from our living rooms. The second was ensuring job security by making sure businesses or functions remained relevant and bills were paid. And the third was empowering people to adapt to expand their existing skill sets into areas in demand by clients or by senior management. So when looking to 2021, a year in which the pandemic-related restrictions are beginning to ease, the industry foresaw two key trends. And the first was an expectation that there would be a lot of movement. Many people responded to the pandemic by really questioning their core values and career goals. And along with this introspection, it became likely that people would look for new opportunities within or even outside of the PR industry. And the second was the increased expectations on the comms function. Communications has become more recognized as a vital component of business strategy and decision making. Because of this, skills like strategic counsel and senior advisory are in greater demand. And against this backdrop, the questions that are front of mind are: how can you retain your high performers? And because of this, skills, and how are you also going to attract new members and grow their skills? And so there's no better group of people to answer these questions and provide some global best practice than our esteemed panelists. So please let me introduce you to Mei-Ling Yao, Managing Director, Southeast Asia Archetype; Ricky Jones, President, BCI Health Asia Pacific and Market Leader, BCW Singapore; Keir McIntosh, Group Head of Talent Acquisition and Talent Management, Asda UK; and Derek Young, Regional People Partner, KPMG China. But before I ask the panelists my questions, please do post any questions in the chat box and we will address these at the end of the session. And we have got a very hard stop at 5:30. So if we run out of time, please do still email me your questions and I'll make sure that we come back to you. So let's start with how to keep staff engaged, motivated and productive. So communications is a profession for people who love people. Social distancing has been particularly challenging for teamwork and collaborating with people in different departments and across the region. Our research last year found that although there was a general consensus that working remotely is certainly not ideal, in 2020, agencies gave the productivity of their team a rating out of 8 out of 10, which is actually quite high. So, what strategies and initiatives have you used to keep your teams engaged, motivated and productive? Ricky, can we start with you?
Sure. So I think the biggest factor for us from the very beginning is that we actually maintained a flexible work environment prior to the pandemic. So it never felt like a huge business or cultural shift for us. That said, we've welcomed plenty of new joiners during the pandemic period, and it's fair to say we're definitely working much more in a remote or a hybrid setting than we would have been, even with that flexibility baked in prior to the pandemic. So in terms of what has worked really well for us, I think overall it's trust. It's really giving our employees a huge degree of flexibility for them to decide how they want to work and where they want to work, not only now but looking forward into the future. We have not yet mandated what coming back to the office looks like, and it's not even on our agenda to do. We want that flexibility to remain because we are in a changed environment. And that trust, I think, has been really motivating for our team members. They tell us that they're more empowered and more motivated to ensure that hybrid and remote working is able to ensure the right efficiencies for them individually and for us collectively as a business, where we're in it together, that accountability is shared. We've also invested more in our people's mental health and well-being, going back to some of the great points that you've just mentioned, Emma, recognizing that the pressures that we all face day to day are currently really different to the pressures that we were all dealing with only 18 months ago. And that commitment has taken shape in many different formats, including the development of bespoke training sessions that have been created for today's environment in mind. We've certainly implemented lots of agency-wide social initiatives, much more than we would be doing, I think, in the physical setting if we were spending our days together, for all of the obvious reasons. And I think it's fair to say that, that typically speaking, our productivity has remained really high throughout this whole period. What I'm more concerned about and continue to be concerned about is how we continuously fill that potential void, and I do say potential very purposefully so, of human connection and that sense of company and, in our case, agency belonging. It's always been such a core part of our company identity that I think it's really hard when you create some extra challenges and hurdles to that. But it's definitely, I think, an opportunity as well as a challenge in terms of how we're pivoting to make sure that's coming through in the same, if not even greater degree than what it was prior to 2020.
Brilliant, thank you. Derek, what about from your perspective at KPMG?
Yeah, I'm in the audit practice, so I think a lot of common similarity to Ricky, that we actually adopt a flexibility working arrangement, but the COVID actually speed up the way we use the virtual world. So first of all, we invest a lot in IT, bandwidth, hardware, software, etc. I'm sure all the companies are doing this, but on top of what Ricky has said, I think one of the points that I find very interesting is that our people are kind of very panicked about the job security and so on. So I think one of the key area we try to do better is the message from the leader about the prospect of the company, to comfort them, and that is very powerful in this particular moment. And because we don't have the opportunity to interact face to face, I think to making good use of the virtual tool, having a two-way dialogue is very important, not just turning on this meeting but without seeing the face. So we try our best at least to lead by example, to show your face and to listen to others. And I think it's very important that in this difficult moment time, and that we need to monitor their well-being very well, and to there's no magic formula. It's all about personal touch, and we want to do this by leading by example. If the leaders are doing the same thing, and then the management level will do the same, and so we just have to love and care about each other. I think this is particularly important during this difficult time. I mean, so and in fact, if we can make use of the virtual tool, in fact, we can have more productive working environment in some cases, because we don't have we save a lot of time of traveling, and in fact we can call a meeting so easily, and with the technology we just with the Outlook we just a button we call a meeting, and even with the mobile phone connection, and you can attend the meeting. So I think it's the way we have to be very open to adapt to the new technology, and our IT has been very supportive and in introducing new tool and telling us how to make good use of it. So that's my point.
Okay. And Derek, you mentioned a lot of things there, but is there anything particular that you think has absolutely worked for you as a business, and things that just haven't worked and you're just going to ditch them now?
I think so far we've been doing we are managing it quite well, and in fact, in Hong Kong situation, we are quite back to normal, but we are now running a hybrid mode, so it's not so much of you're not required to go to the office anymore. So I think we strike through it, but now we are trying to strike a balance. Okay, when we are back to normal, what kind of mode should we be in? Of course, we will be allowing flexibility, but how do we make the best use of it?
Yeah, absolutely. And Ricky, is there anything in particular that you feel has really worked for you, and again, things that just haven't?
Yeah, beyond some of the areas that I mentioned earlier, other things that have worked well for us, I think, are more formal pulse checks. We've lost the ability to do the same degree of informal pulse checking that we would do across the team if we were in the office. So finding more formal opportunities to be listening to inform our people and our business strategies, absolutely. Overhauling what our new joiner processes look like, recognizing that joining a team in a hybrid or all virtual model looks very different to what we all traditionally know. And looking at our training opportunities as well. I think particularly for some of our junior employees who will be having a very different start to their careers compared to what most of us have been able to experience. We want to make sure that there's no opportunity for skill gaps to be developing, and I think that requires or has required a different viewpoint.
Okay, and have these strategies significantly differed in 2020 and 2001 as compared with what life was like pre-COVID? Know anything on that, Ricky?
Yeah, I think our fundamental approach to how we engage our employees and give our employees an agency-specific experience hasn't necessarily changed, but the business environment around our people have changed. And so we need to provide different looking support for them to have that same degree of day-to-day satisfaction that I think they always have. So being mindful of the different mental pressures, being mindful of the fact that it's harder to draw a line between the professional working day and the personal working day when everything clashes in the same geographical space. So I think how the what is what has changed, and I think it's changed forevermore, quite frankly.
Yeah. Okay. So let's move on to sort of upskilling and reskilling. So our research showed that in 2020, the skill sets most in demand were internal comms, strategic counsel, and digital. And this was completely different to previous years, where events, influencer engagement and brand marketing were highly valued. So many experienced professionals have been able to pivot into new disciplines, which is fantastic. And that's been underpinned by their competencies in strategic advisory. However, as you've mentioned as well, Ricky, there is a concern that junior and mid-level talents have been left to fend for themselves. So how important is it for the industry to really elevate talent to become strategic advisors? And how do you make that happen? You know, what are the effective tools to actually do this? Mei Ling, do you want to take that question?
Thank you, Emma. And I think, you know, right where we are right now, last year to this year, yes, there's definitely a change in what clients demand. I think they demand more from their consultants. They want us to be advisors. They want us to be strategic counselors. So you mentioned specifically the mid-level. And it's actually a challenge area for most agencies, where the mid-level is the one we lose to in-house. We train them, we get them to a certain level of competency, and then they want more. So the challenge is not just retention, but also then getting them to the next level of being principal consultants, right? So I would say it's a mixture of things, how we elevate the skills. Number one is ensuring that they understand that they have a progression path within an agency. And that is communications, that's career development. But more importantly, it's about training. Training helps develop knowledge and skills, but it can only take you so far. And so I would say more key is exposure. So the opportunity for these consultants to actually have hands-on experience, working with more senior strategic consultants, being able to pull learnings into action on new mandates. And it's achieved organically over time, usually. But I think more now, people want to have specific things listed. They want to have goals, they want to have objectives. So it's orchestrating that, ensuring that these mid-level consultants know that they have a path, and we're enabling that for them. And working virtually, if you say 2021 compared to last year, I think working virtually actually supports this. We see more of our teams being able to work on multi-market mandates. They now clients are more open to teams that perhaps sit in Hong Kong, sit in Singapore, sit in Malaysia. And, that means consultants actually get that opportunity to learn, to grow, to elevate their skills. And, that's so important to that mid-layer, and I'm hoping that will continue going forward.
So they're actually getting more visibility than ever before with key senior members of the team then, now that we've gone through.
So I would say this working virtually means that there are no more barriers, right? Clients are really important. If I say I have a senior consultant that's an expert in crisis comms, she sits in Malaysia, and we can pull someone that's really good at internal comms to help you with the crisis, and that person sits in Australia. We can pull teams in Malaysia and Australia together a lot easier now.
Yeah. Okay, fantastic. Ricky, what about you and what you're doing at GCI to really sort of elevate these people into becoming senior strategic advisors?
Yeah, well, I completely agree with everything that Mei Ling has just spoken through. And I think in addition, been a recognition for us that yes, absolutely, there's so much benefit to our team members being exposed to so much more because of the virtual setting, but also an acceptance that we need to spend more time coaching behind the scenes, that there's a little bit of that opportunity that we do lose in the virtual environment. That is an acceptance of additional senior time to be invested in our mid and junior levels, or in some instances, a greater investment in training. And we have to be able to flex and develop our business models in recognition of how training and development needs are going to evolve, and what that does require of investment, whether that be senior time or training budget.
So both of you mentioned a lot about training, which is great. But has your organisation's approach changed, I guess? What are you doing differently about your training and development staff?
We're not doing a huge amount that's fundamentally different, but I think our core focus areas are changing with the business and operating environment around us. Models for both GCI Health and BCW, we benefit hugely from our international networks, providing a huge amount of opportunity for us to pull down from, which we always complement with market-specific sessions, which are a combination of refining the beautiful basics as we go, as well as providing everyone stretch opportunities and development opportunities that might not come along in the same frequency if it were just on-the-job training, which is, of course, really important for all of the obvious reasons. But where we're really investing this year in terms of where we pull in external trainers, where we spend more time, are things like the mental well-being and the resilience, and how we demonstrate gravitas in an online world versus an in-person world. So it's really just the focus areas that are shifting for us at the moment.
Mei Ling, what about your approach to training and development? Has that changed again, do you think? Is it more important than ever before now?
I wouldn't say it's changed, but we've pivoted our thinking, where in the past, people demanded training as part of development. And so at Archetype, I like to say we're taking a more realistic view and a wider sort of perspective on where we see people development happening. The received wisdom, like Ricky says, tells us that the easiest way for people to develop is on the job, where you can apply what you've learned immediately. So, I've stolen this from somewhere, I think it's KPMG, Derek, where we employ the 70-20-10 model for development, where we say 70% is on the job, 20% is through coaching and mentoring, and 10% is through training. So then we're setting the right mindset in our people to say that our job we're not an organization. We are a consulting environment. You are going to learn on the job. We're going to coach, we're going to mentor you through this. And what we can't give you internally, we will look for external trainers or develop training programs for you. So it's about expectations by level. You're expected to have certain skills, but you know, what we've just developed is a multi-directional growth model. It's not new, but actually just listing it out for our people to say that growth and development happens in many ways in an agency, in an in-house environment. You can grow up vertically, you can grow sideways, where you learn diverse skills, or you can grow deeper. You want to become an expert in a particular area. And what we're telling our people is that you need to have a growth mindset. You need to put yourself in the driver's seat so that when it comes to individual growth, and therein lies that challenge, that change in mindset, where we're not here to train you, you're here to tell us what you need to grow and where you need to grow. So I think that's a slight change in how we're
absolutely.
Yeah.
Mei-Ling, how much, you mentioned both external and internal. It sounds as if the focus is mainly on internal training, but you are, I mean, how much training is actually done externally from the business, would you say?
Yeah, so when we say internal training, some of it is actually based on external platforms like LinkedIn Learning, where they're actually paid platforms where we curate content for people. So it's done internally. They're sitting at home or in the office learning individually, but a lot of the courses are being pushed from an external source. But we've also, I think, had some time in the last year to think about creating more programs that are more bespoke. So we're in an industry where soft skills, yes, you can get external trainers to impart resilience training, leadership training, but a lot of what we need our people to learn or be trained on is bespoke to the communications industry.
Sure.
Teaching them specific things. So we're actually investing more time and senior resources into creating our own training courses and workshop materials. We put them onto these platforms so that people can have them on demand. It's time consuming, as you all know, and it's a labor of love, but I think these training sessions actually hit the spot better. So
yeah, and it's so important. It's so important to individuals. If I think about why people leave jobs, why people come to me to say, can you help us find a new role? 9 times out of 10, they think they're not being trained properly. So absolutely, it is time consuming, but it's so important, isn't it, to keep staff engaged. Derek, can I just now get your perspective? So how is training prioritized at KPMG? Given that time is spent on training, it's obviously taken away from client servicing and billable hours. So how do you manage that?
Well, it is definitely still very important, although it only comprises of supposedly 10% of our time. I have to agree with Mei-Ling that a lot of our training is on the job, but with the there are so many training we have to, the mandatory training, whether this is technical training or update knowledge that we have to be equipped with. But I think that the key is that we do have to continue to invest into our people to learn this new skill, the knowledge. While talking about a technical point of view, right? The technical skill is very important in order for them to stay as a professional. So there's no question that we will be removing, or we are actually investing more resource on this. But the thing is, we cannot, because with the virtual environment, we cannot simply just put the physical training into the e-learning platform. So we are doing a lot of things to make this more concise and easy to understand, more fun, interactive. Because I cannot imagine you sit in front of a screen doing a 4-hour e-learning. It will not work. And we're doing a lot of investment into how do we make these things more concise, and then the rest you can do your own research on the portal, etc. So I think this is a journey we are going through. And other than the technical training, as what Mei-Ling was mentioning, we also have LinkedIn Learning. I think the point is because we treat everyone is different in the firm. We are not trying to create the same species. I think we have to learn something that is most suitable for them. So I think external platform is a better way of dealing with this, because they have all the courses available, which are up to date. And it's just too much. We cannot afford to, produce 700 courses, which other platform can, just have a click. And so we are also pushing investment into this. And and at the same time, we are also investing into some joint courses with university to cater some program, really just on the technology side. How did you use technology to enhance our business? That's more specific to our industry, but I think that is the direction that we also want our people to have an opportunity to learn back to the university with some tailor program, which is a part of the retention strategy as well, I guess.
Yeah, fantastic, thank you. Kia, can you tell us a little bit more about how you evaluate the effectiveness of training at ASDA?
Well, we have a slightly different challenge because we've got the challenge of scale. So we have 146,000 people who work for the company across the UK. But what we do though is we make sure that each individual has got an individual development plan, and they've also got an associated learning map that goes along with that. Which clearly takes a fair amount of effort. And we do enshrine 10% learning in their role as well. And that's book learning rather than skills on the job learning. And we're very clear about the difference between. Now, as Derek said, we clearly have certain parts that are mandatory training, but then we have a lot that is not mandatory training, and therefore people do want to broaden their own skill set. And I've got the benefit of being on the European McKinsey CHRO group. And we had a session yesterday because they were promoting their top 100 CHRO conversations that they'd held over 100 days. And McKinsey were promoting the fact that significant numbers of workforces were looking to upskill themselves across the last year in non-mandatory training, but it was bettering themselves in their softer skills. So we had a look at our skill sets and what we were looking at spikes across the last year overnight. And it's quarters like how to manage through ambiguity for our younger or more junior managers, how to build resilience, how to set clear objectives, how to hold clear and honest conversations with individuals, both up and down. And therefore, we're now starting to make some of those. And by the way, this is onward going work, of course, but we're making some of those courses now mandatory for our more unskilled managers, and also some of our colleagues that are newer to our business who have landed in a more remote environment. And we actually see the physical results through performance improvement. And therefore we can see some of our work is KRA driven or KPI driven or objective driven. And we actually do see the swing upwards of productivity, both in terms of business results, but in terms of the growth of that individual as well. So we do see the tangible results, but we also, because we have an individual learning map and an individual development plan, we do hold individuals accountable for their own journey.
Fantastic, thank you. Okay, so let's now talk a little bit more about retaining talent. So the average cost of replacing an employee is between 16 to 20% of their annual salary. So keeping teams engaged and motivated clearly makes good economic and business sense. So Ricky, let me put this question to you first of all. In your experience, what is the correlation between professional development and staff retention? And again, has this changed since the pandemic, do you think?
I think the correlation is huge for any of us, no matter what level we're at. Once the opportunity to learn and develop starts to dry up, whether perceived or reality, it's when people to look elsewhere. But I think it's really important to break down professional development and look at it in the context of the employee experience as a whole. Professional development is the type of work that people are exposed to, the caliber of their colleagues around them, the level of excellence that they're held accountable to on the agency side or in-house, the types of companies and brands that they get to support. It really is a complete package, and how we provide that package does evolve a little bit in the pandemic setting, but I think the fundamentals all remain the same, and we have to be able to look at it, with that holistic viewpoint. Training and development definitely part of that, but a much broader picture.
But do you think overall professional development is really helping keeping people in the team?
Yeah,
you can see that
absolutely.
they want to learn, they want to stay because they are really getting great professional development from you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, great.
The minute that slows down is when people start to question if they are where they should be.
Yeah, okay. And is there again correlation, how does this correlation compare between Singapore and Hong Kong and globally?
I think from our experience in the region, the correlation is fairly on par between Singapore and Hong Kong. And in my experience internationally or working globally, I think it's fair to say that Asia is a higher turnover market. People are tending to look elsewhere earlier. And it's also my experience globally that we expect more of our people here in Asia. It's a very hard working culture comparatively. And look, I don't have all of the answers in terms of whether that is a correlation in terms of the turnover differences that we see region to region. But it is certainly something that I'm very conscious of, because I do think that is a question that is worth us reflecting very deeply on here to see if there are changes that we can collectively bring about as an industry to better us all.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Mei Ling, what other factors do you think come into play when creating a stable team environment and retaining your key staff?
Oh, Emma, so many factors.
Tell us.
I think fundamentally, I think people everywhere want recognition. They want appreciation. They want fair remuneration, of course, but meaningful work, opportunities for growth, career development. I think these are all primary factors why people stay and create that stable team environment. You know, I feel more and more today, people want to be heard. They want signals that management understands what is important to them and that we care, and we show it in tangible ways. So a lot starts and is sustained by ensuring that we have open and frequent communications. I think everyone here has talked about this, where, you know, employees need to hear, they need to understand, importantly, the role that they play. What can they do to support the business? If they feel that they have a role in the growth of the business, in the stability of the business, then they're more likely to want to carry on that journey, I feel.
Yeah.
And I think it sounds easy.
Oh, we lost Mei Ling. Not sure if we're going to get Mei Ling back.
Oh, can you hear me?
So we can hear you now. Sorry, you cut out.
Okay, sorry. I won't repeat myself, but I think it was just about communications. And the second point was actually about measuring employee engagement. To do this, we actually have a confidential staff survey platform. We're really lucky. It's a global platform that's independent. It sends out surveys on measuring employee engagement on a regular basis. Have I lost you? Oh dear.
Just about. We can hear you just about. I think you're just frozen. Well, let's move on to the next question, and hopefully you'll be back with us, Mei Ling. So this is a question to everybody. How effectively have you transitioned your team culture from the physical to the virtual working environment? And I know you're all at different stages, but Ricky, do you want to start with how you've managed to do that and keep that team culture that's so important?
Yeah, sure. I think, as I mentioned earlier, for the most part, it wasn't too difficult for us because there was flexibility and remote working for us beforehand. But going back to some of the earlier discussion across people, I think something that has been really, a great blessing for us is how we've been able to interact, or how we've been able to increase the levels of interactivity with our colleagues across different offices and across different regions. So also globally, we have been able to embrace this need and make everyone feel part of a bigger picture and more connected. And while we certainly could have done that to the same degree pre-pandemic, I think the pandemic situation has spurred us on some more. So I think there's a sense of what the global culture is for our business, and that providing a good umbrella for our belonging. And then I think a lot of it is just in the day-to-day, how we are ensuring that there are team touch bases, that there are socials, that we are ensuring the opportunity for everyone to have real and personal relationships in this environment rather than transactional ones, which is always a risk and definitely something we have to invest very heavily in for those who are newer to our business, and particularly those who might be at the junior or mid-level stages of their career.
Yeah. Thank you. Kia, do you want to give us your opinion on this? Because I imagine you've got a mixture of people physically in the shops, but also people that are virtual. So how have you managed to keep team culture?
You're right, we do have a huge amount of retail colleagues who are at the shelf edge, and then we've got a significant amount of colleagues, about 15,000, that work in our home offices. We've got 3 of those over the UK. I think we're all doing it broadly the same, to be honest with you. We're over communicating around the human element of the role. One of the things that Edelman have raised in 2021 on their trust barometer is that the employer is now more trusted than the government and the media at this current time. And therefore we've got to fill that gap with giving an individual a sense of worth and a sense of purpose, and also feeling appreciated. So one of the things that we've done on the softer end is that we're not just looking at, let's say, mental health. We're looking at the 4 aspects of workplace well-being, because while we've got physical well-being at the shelf edge, because in the UK at the beginning of the pandemic, people were not versed in wearing face masks. In Europe, it's a very different culture around hygiene and protection. So we had to take people through that, both physically and emotionally, in terms of well-being factor. We've got other people who've got financial health issues or well-being issues, and therefore we were working all that out. And also our more junior members are lacking that social well-being as well. And therefore we're filling some of that gap and making sure that every time we interact with members of our team, and it starts with, how are you doing? And we're still in that because we're still forced to work remotely. We're not working flexibly. We're forced to work from a home environment. There's a very big difference there. There's no flexibility in it at all. So, and what we're doing there as managers is that we're making sure that those touch points, even if they're frequent and often, they're valuable to the individual, because we don't know how many other touch points they have in their roles. And to Ricky's point, we have lost the spaces in between. So the spaces of going with the junior from one meeting to another meeting, or in a cab, going somewhere, or whatever. And they're the points where you normally mentor and coach and tutor an individual who learn by osmosis, or you tweak how that conversation just went. We're making sure that we're dealing with those in the moment, because once they're gone, you won't remember. They might, but they won't get that back, because quite frankly, they'll probably feel apologetic about going back to that moment and the time is gone. So we're dialing up the human all the time as much as we can, while also trying to govern productivity and workload and being respectful around the individual, because we are seeing that we're asking more of our people, but we don't want people to work harder in terms of longer hours. We want them to be smarter. So we're path clearing a lot of the other stuff that we were historically asking of people, and we're being really clear about prioritization and getting rid of the non-essential. So it's of respect, over indirecting on the human, but also understanding capability. So a long answer, but I think that probably covers a number of the parts that we're covering on.
Thank you, that's great. Yeah, Derek, do you have any comments on how you've transitioned team culture from physical to virtual?
Yeah, I think Kia and Ricky said it very well. It's all about trust, being open, and honest, and on top of this, I think we're already moving out of the forced to work remotely situation, and now we are in a hybrid mode. In fact, I want to take this opportunity to answer the question from Lauren about the advice on how we can look to rebuild the culture with the new hybrid working model. In fact, we want people to work remotely because, obviously the space in Hong Kong is very expensive. We don't mind, so we can rebuild the model. So we're really seriously thinking about these kind of things. But people, when they have a choice, they do like to get together. That is the reality, because we work in a team environment. So I think we at the same time, we still want to give them the flexibility, because they already granted the flexibility. it's very difficult to take it back from them. And we are more than happy to give them the flexibility as long as they can deliver. So I think if the situation going back to normal, I still think that people like to see each other. If they're really working in a team environment, and I hope they will continue to do so. But at the same time, we need to give them the flexibility, because they may have their own hobby or commitment to go to, and we encourage them to do so. But so in the longer run, I think the challenge is how do we monitor, how the progress and etc. So setting a very clear KPI to make sure that they are accountable for what they're doing, I think is the longer run solution. So it's all about being clear and with the objective KPI, and I think that is a longer term goal that we must strive to achieve.
Okay. Yeah. Mei Ling, is there any other points you want to make about how you've transitioned your team culture from physical to virtual?
I think everyone's made some really good points on that whole transition, but if I were to reflect, I would say it's flexibility and not being afraid to admit that something doesn't work. We all were experimenting last year, right? We all tried different things and figured some things worked better than others. Some things worked in some markets, didn't work in others. So we realized at our management levels that it was about making work for us locally in each market. Giving people, the leaders, the freedom within a framework. So if we were to say we will allow flexible working, some markets like China went back to full-time work a lot earlier, and some markets like India are still 100% work from home. So how were we able to adjust and continue doing the best work for our clients while putting our people, their safety, their well-being, their ability to grow and progress and feel a sense of achievement at the center of it all? So I think that's just to wrap up that question. I would say that transition.
Great. Lovely, thank you. So finally, let's discuss how to attract new staff. And obviously, some of the most effective ways of attracting staff is to showcase your culture and for people to meet the team. And clearly now that hasn't always been possible. And I know certainly we've placed a lot of people into roles that are just starting from their kitchen table virtually. So recruitment strategy, I am assuming, must be changing in your businesses. So Derek, can I ask you, how has your recruitment strategy changed as a result of the 2020 events at KPMG?
Well, we have totally revamped, and I was thankful for the opportunity that we can revamp the entire recruitment process to be, first of all, virtual, and there's a lot of social media usage and that we have leveraged. I can give a little bit of example, but each year we recruit more than 200 people in Hong Kong, professional staff. So previously to talking about learning about our culture, it's not about a leader or senior management to go out and speak about this. It's about how they experience this. So we actually launched a virtual academy, having junior staff to share their own life experience, nothing scripted. It's all about from their heart. So at the end, I realized that we were being recognized having a family culture, that everyone are being so supportive to each other, which was a very, very powerful message that we sent to the viewer. So we continue our journey to build this so-called family culture. We run a Facebook Live event to answer questions, because in our space we are competing with our competitor to recruit the best talent. As you know, we all recruiting over hundreds of candidates. So we make them feel our family and supportive culture, which turns out to be something they are looking for, especially during this difficult time. They want, we are supporting each other. So we have a social media live event, and we also interact with the student throughout like games, participation on submitting the best cooking photo competition. So there was a lot of engagement that we were able to achieve a lot of attention from the university students. So I think that was a big change. And also in the recruitment process, we group individual in a virtual setting. It's also something new. So we run through a virtual discussion in a group of 6 with common hot topic, nothing technical. And then at the end of the session, we have chit chat with manager and partner, and that turns out to be very welcoming because they have the chance to speak and interact with partners and manager to understand about our culture. So I think to promote about our culture is it needs to be mutual for them to feel and to ask questions, not just having a leader to talk about this.
Yeah.
So that's my view.
Yeah, great, thank you. Kia, how has your employee brand proposition changed or evolved as a result of the events of 2020?
They've shifted markedly. When we went into our first lockdown, which was 54 weeks ago, we immediately had to shield 18,000 of our colleagues, and we had to recruit 25,000 people over the course of 3 weeks to ensure that we could actually run our shops. And let's face it, grocery retail is a gritty business. And over that period of time, there seems to be a lot of galvanization within the UK of putting these individuals as essential workers onto a pedestal. So they were food heroes, feeding the nation, that kind of drumbeat. And that was done by the nation rather than as others firms. But we were very, very comfortable going in the wake of that. And it allowed us to turn our employees into talent evangelists and talent advocates, because they were, we're proud to be ASDA, we're proud to be a colleague at ASDA. But over the course of the last year, that was heightened immeasurably. And we're still utilizing that as a talent attractor. But we use our colleagues to be authentic about what it's like to have an experience in our organization. And we promote that externally, because if our experience employee brand is different to our talent external brand, then we've got a significant issue. So we're keeping that authenticity running through. And that's something that we do want to make sure is enhanced across the next year. And I think that's where we're going to find a challenge, because it will naturally erode as we go back towards a more normalized lifestyle. But we've actually done quite well, but we put the individual who's the authentic employee at the heart of most of our campaigns.
Right, fantastic, thank you. Mei Ling, can I just ask you about this as well? And how are you able to differentiate your culture from those of your competitors when you're doing this remotely?
I think it's hard and it requires focus. We all know that culture is built over time. So it's that secret sauce that is celebrated, encouraged, valued by everyone in an organization. So one of the key challenges that we found, and I think Ricky, you mentioned this, that sense of belonging, and how do you create that with people who are new to the organization? And a lot of them haven't stepped into an office, we've not even shaken hands, we've not seen each other beyond a Zoom screen, right? So one area that I went back and looked at was onboarding, and how critical that was. Because, we spend so much time trying to recruit people, telling them the story, join us because, we have a great culture. So how do we show that to them tangibly, whether they were in the office or hybrid or, whatever? And one thing that I looked at, or 3 things I looked at, was consistency of touch points. When we say culture, it's got to permeate everything, right? It's in our messages, our touch points. And you'll be surprised how many things actually morph out of shape over time. And if you have multi-offices, do an audit and see what it tells you. How differently do our messages come across? And then really focusing on that first day experience. I looked at welcome swag. Today people want Instagrammable pictures. Their first day at work. What's that experience like? Having personalized messages, having a buddy to lean on, all these things become more important when we are working in hybrid environments, right? So I've learned not to underestimate that importance of that initial perception, what these people go back and talk about, and they tell their friends about who might work in other agencies or other places. So that's I think really key. And we can say we're different, but I think the key thing is how we consistently show this across all the different touch points.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you. Ricky, how effectively have you been able to communicate your employee value proposition to future staff?
To be honest, I don't think there's been any fundamental change for us here. I think as long as we are businesses at which the employee value proposition really does sit at the core of what we do and how we do it. The how might need to evolve a little bit tactically, but that hasn't been a fundamental shift for us. Okay.
Keir, anything about the sort of EVP experience at Asda?
Well, I've got the fortunate task of looking after our EVP, but as I said before, we want to make sure it's completely aligned. So the experience of the individual is the same as the external talent attraction brand, and we utilize our colleagues as advocates as much as possible. EVP is not just what we can offer the individual in terms of experience and benefit. It's got to be the holistic opportunity for the individual, how they can grow personally, rather than just, my pay and rations. It's now a lot more dialed up around the individual, and it's a two-way loyalty street. I feel that sometimes in Asia, it can be more around the individual, and therefore we have a loyalty to them, but they don't necessarily pay it back as much. I think now there seems to be, at this moment in time, more of an equilibrium, because our employees want more of us, and as long as we step up and give it, then we have more loyalty inside at that point. We're in a moment in time, and I think we do need to ensure that we continue to lean on it, because if we go back to previous ways of working, and God, I'd be surprised if we do, but if we do, then that's our own fault too.
Yeah. Okay, fantastic. Thank you. So look, I think we have a couple of questions, but before we move on to the questions, can all of you just give me or give the audience one tip to how you can effectively create a really happy, productive and engaged working culture? Mei Ling, let's start with you.
Okay, one tip, I would say anticipate needs and step out of the tried and tested. Don't be afraid to experiment and have some fun doing things, because I think we've never been more forgiving of trying new things than we are this year.
Fantastic. Keir?
I'd say the sense of purpose and belief is crucial at the corporate and also at the individual level. They've got to be aligned. People have got to understand why they're there and what they're doing and what the overall purpose is. You talk to the cleaner at NASA, he still thinks that his job is to get a man to the moon. He's cleaning the washrooms, but he knows the mission. The two have got to be co-aligned.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you. Derek?
Yeah, I think nowadays building a trusted relationship is so important. So I think as a leader, we need to listen more and give credit.
Fantastic. Thank you. Ricky?
In compliment to everything that's been said, I'll also say honesty. I think we can raise our hands and be clear when we don't have the answers, because we are looking to trailblaze and do things that haven't been done before. And honesty is a two-way street and a real underpinning for trust.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you. Well, let's just go through the questions. I think we've just got two. Is that right, Amanda?
Sorry.
We can't hear you.
Hi, everyone. This is Amanda here from the Prospect team. Yes, we do have two questions. Shall I just go through them really quickly?
Sure.
So we have one from Nina. Thanks for your question, Nina. And she asked, some of the panelists have mentioned the importance of companies providing a sense of purpose and meaning for their employees. In practice, how do you do that? Would any of the panelists like to take this question on?
I'm happy to go.
Please, Ricky, please go on.
Sure, Ricky.
All right. So I oversee GCI Health, which is a dedicated health agency in APAC, as well as BCW in Singapore, which is a multidisciplinary agency. And how I answer that question looks different depending on which hat I'm wearing. On the GCI Health side, I mean, we are a health dedicated agency living through a pandemic. Purpose feels very clear there in terms of the specialty expertise that we deliver, why we exist in terms of being able to support improved health outcomes for patients the world over, working with stakeholders across the healthcare ecosystems. And I think it's been a real opportunity for the health comms industry to really level set in terms of our value and what that means for us in terms of careers and what that means for us in terms of collective purpose. But all of that, no matter the area of business that we're ultimately focusing on, I think rings true ordinarily. It's finding that sweet spot of collective purpose, of what matters to our people, the value that we can deliver as business, and where that overlap exists, and making sure that we can always keep our businesses and keep our people squarely in that overlap. Because if it starts to go one way too far or the other, that's where we start to lose direction, and people don't know what they're working towards.
Fantastic.
Yeah, would you like to add to that?
Yeah, we try and make sure that we lift the strategy and the purpose off the page as much as possible. So we very much dial up the what and also the how, and put the individual there. Because we have a very varied workforce, we have to make sure that we're very clear about the purpose of the individual and what their part is in the overall aim. So we sometimes, it's not on a dotted line in terms of what we expect, it's a very firm hard line, but it creates clarity and therefore efficiency of message. And we find that in certain areas that works incredibly well.
Thanks for that. So the next question we have, which is from an anonymous attendee. So PR professionals in this past year have seen the effects of job losses around them. Many of them are also working really hard. In fact, they're feeling depressed, stressed, and even burned out. How can we motivate and support them? Maybe this is a question for Ricky and Mei Ling.
I can jump in here. Very true. It's unfortunate, but PR is already a very stressful job and environment, and we tried very hard not to affect people's jobs and to protect people's rice bowls, like we say in Asia. So we didn't have a lot of that happening, but we had stresses. People were tired, people felt overworked, understaffed, and it's normal. But now that we're coming out of it, there was a lot of reassurance then. And then now that we're coming out of it is making good on what we promised. That trust, when we talk about trust and honesty and being able to tell our people that vision, where are we headed? Where are we going? We can't, and we always caveat it to say, we don't actually know what's coming in the future. We can only set directions and policies and actions based on what we know now. But based on what we know now in our company culture, our priority is protecting jobs. Take that stress away. Know that we'll always put you at the center. If things change, we will come back to you and tell you. So we can help by alleviating a little bit of that mental stress and providing support on that front. But honestly, I think uncertainty is something that we have to live with. And it's creating that resilience in our people to understand that change is okay. And ultimately, you'll be okay. And I think that helps a little bit. I'm not sure if that answers the question.
I think it does. Does it answer your question? If not, please leave another question in the box. Ricky, would you also like to add to that?
Yeah, sure. And our experience and approach very much echoes what Mei Ling has just described. So I think the only thing I would add to that is I think we also need to look inwards as an industry in terms of our baseline. These stresses are very real, and burnout is very real in our industry at any given time. And that is the fundamental piece that we have to change. And no one agency can change that. No one employer can change that, no matter how great they are. We have to be able to work together at an industry level and join forces in creating change so that we can always provide our people the very best career experience from the time that they enter the industry, keep them in the industry, right until their senior working days. And there is so much room for improvement in how we are collectively doing that together.
Amanda, I think we need to wrap up really soon. So maybe one person could answer the final question. Would that be possible? How do you retain an employee who's driven by money? Anyone want to take that one?
I'm an accountant, I can talk about this. But this monetary reward is very hard to beat. But I think in the longer term, I see this is only one of the factors. There's also other element to it. The mentorship relationship with how much he can learn from the individual boss or leader, and the flexibility you are giving him or her, and also the career that you are painting in front of him or her, because we are not just talking about the immediate reward, but the progress in the career. I think the four things maybe we also mentioned before is about the exposure, the empowerment, etc. So if you can beat, if you cannot beat the monetary reward, these are the other elements we need to work harder on. Yes.
Okay, thank you. Thanks very much, Derek. Thank you to all of you today for participating. We really appreciate your comments. And many thanks to our audience as well. Have a good evening. Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Good evening.